did Lucas Giolito throw a no-hitter last night? But he did so in like this crazy impressive fashion, 13 strikeouts, which would lead you to think that over the course of 9 innings, his pitch count would be super high. And when I saw, was watching that game, trying to figure out if he'd be able to stay in, I hadn't noticed his pitch count, pulled up the app and saw that he was at like less than 90 pitches entering the 9th inning. And it blew me away that this dude had done what he was doing on that much of a pitch count with 13 strikeouts. So sure, the no-hitter is impressive, but 13 strikeouts over 9 innings of no-hit baseball, that's even better on just 101 pitches. So Lucas Giolito coming through last night in a major way. So let's see if we can try to find tonight's Lucas Giolito. I think we may, because Wednesday's slate is pretty good for pitching. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down tonight's 12-game main slate. There is an earlier lock than usual for tonight. They are including 2 games prior to 7 o'clock. The first one is at 6:37. So lock 6:37 this evening. If you are a procrastinator when it comes to lineups, as I am, make sure you have those set and done before 6:37 for tonight, because lock is earlier than usual. Less tinker time, which is probably a good thing for all of us. There is a good chance of rain in Buffalo tonight for the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. That feels weird to say. I would not be shocked at all if that game winds up getting postponed, because the rain looks to be pretty constant. It looks to be decently heavy, so I would not make big plans around that game as the way things look right now. Does not look good in Buffalo for the Jays and the Sox. It's only 58 degrees in San Francisco, so once again, downgrade hitters in that one, but, kind of always there to begin with. So those are only 2 weather notes for tonight. But again, I would not make big plans around the Blue Jays Red Sox game, because it does not look good. A lot of stuff right now in the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Not only do we have our usual podcast, the Tom Vecchio, the Daily ISO, and the Daily Deke, getting you set for each day's NBA and NHL DFS slates, but also the PGA DFS podcast with myself and Brandon Gadula, breaking down this week's BMW Championship, the second leg of the FedEx Cup playoffs. No cut this week, which will definitely help things out. So make sure you give that a listen. Get those lineups in by tomorrow and enjoy a no-cut event. Tomorrow, we have a NASCAR podcast getting you set for Daytona, the final race of the regular season for NASCAR before the playoffs begins. A little extra chaos on top of what you usually get at Daytona. Should be a pretty fun race. Breaking that down tomorrow, both strategies and drivers who I like, based on the starting order, which is already out. So that will be up tomorrow on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Make sure you are subscribed to that numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, the Google Play Store, radio.com, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. So make sure you are subscribed. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. As a reminder as well, we are back today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time to break down your questions around tonight's MLB DFS slate. That is on the FanDuel YouTube page, also on Twitch and on Facebook. You can ask questions from any of those platforms, and we will get your questions answered leading into lock tonight as the lineups come out. So make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube page. Also check us out on Twitch and on Facebook. The NBA playoffs are upon us, and FanDuel has you covered. Compete in the Mountain Dew NBA Free Play Daily from now through September 4th for your chance to win your seat in a virtual event with NBA legends Gary Payton and Ray Allen. With each entry, you will also be entered into the King of the Mountain 3-point bonus for your chance to win a share of $15,000, brought to you by Mountain Dew, the official sponsor of the NBA. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Wednesday slate, and it is a dandy. Clayton Kershaw is at the top of the pool, tied with Jacob deGrom. They are both $10,700 on FanDuel for tonight. Sonny Gray checks in at 10-2 with Mike Clevenger back up from the alternate site for Cleveland. He is $9,400. Dinelson Lamet is $9,300, and Jose Barrios is $9,000. Eliezer Hernandez and Kevin Gausman are the others at $8,000 or higher. And I think we're going to do the same thing as yesterday. We're going to break this down into tiers and go with my favorite pitcher in each tier for tonight. The upper range, the middle range, and then the value plays for tonight. And among the super high salary guys, I think it's between Jacob deGrom and Sonny Gray. Kershaw is awesome, and I always love Kershaw, but Facing the Giants, they don't strike out a whole lot, and I like the upside from a strikeout perspective more in DeGrom and Gray. Clevenger, not sure what the pitch count will be on him, as he has been away from the team for a bit now for good reason. DeGrom is at home against the Marlins, always like that. Gray on the road against the Brewers, and you would think that would make us favor DeGrom by a mile because we have preseason conceptions of each team. The Marlins, not that hot. The Brewers, we tend to like. But the Brewers are very much the higher strikeout team right now. That does favor Sonny Gray, but I'm still going to go with DeGrom here. And it's largely because of where these two guys are pitching. Gray is on the road, and his strikeout rate went down on the road last year, but his walk rate was the bigger concern because that went way up on the road last year. And Gray has still issued a few too many walks so far this year, so that's a decent concern for me. Meanwhile, DeGrom has just a 5% walk rate this year, and he gets the pitch at home, whereas Gray is on the road. And that helps make this decision a little bit easier for me. It also helps that DeGrom has been awesome this year, a 2.92 skill interactive ERA. He has a 32% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate. Now, the Marlins offense has definitely exceeded expectations this year. They have a 106 WRC plus against righties, and it's not a super high strikeout rate. So the Marlins are not the poor offense that many thought they would be coming into this year. But it's a good enough matchup where we can feel good about DeGrom. If things were reversed with DeGrom being on the road while Gray was at home, I'd probably flip them and go with Gray as my number one pitcher. But for tonight, DeGrom is my preferred option between the two and my number one pitcher overall on tonight's slate. Now, moving to the, middle tier, depends on how you define that. Let's go lower 9,000s. Dinelson Lamet is not a huge discount from those guys at $9,300, but he's a tiny bit cheaper, and I am very interested in Lamet in this spot. There are two things that have me higher on Lamet now than I have been all year. The first thing is his pitch count, because before his most recent start, the highest pitch count for Lamet was 91 pitches, and he had been under 85 in every other start he had made. But then last week, the Padres let Lamet go 97 pitches. His pitch count projection, if you're projecting pitch counts, which you should still be down around 90 or so. That's why I'm not going to put him above DeGrom or Gray. But Lamet can go 100, and that's enough to put him in good play for tournaments. The second reason I like Lamet more is that he has ditched his sinker. He threw it 19% of the time last year, and it was not a good pitch for him. So in his past three starts, Lamet has barely thrown that pitch. And that is scary because it makes Lamet a two-pitch pitcher with just his four-seam fastball and his slider. But those two pitches are really good, and he has been awesome despite being just a two-pitch guy. He has a 2.23 skill interactive ERA in those three starts with a 44% strikeout rate. There has been a lot of hard contact. You kind of expect that out of a guy who throws his slider as often as Lamet does. So it's another reason for shakiness and to potentially put him behind Gray and DeGrom. But the Mariners don't provide a lot of hard contact. The team is 28th in hard hit rate against righties this year. They have enough strikeouts for us to be excited. So the floor on Lamet is not as good as with the other guys, with Gray and with DeGrom, but his ceiling is just as good as theirs, and that matters a lot. So Lamet is behind DeGrom for me. I think that you could argue to put him above Gray because the focus is just on ceiling. I go back and forth between those two. I think it's DeGrom 1, Gray 2A, and then Lamet 2B. But in the upper register here overall, I am going to go DeGrom 1 and then back and forth between Gray and Lamet as far as who I will rank second for tonight. For a third pitcher, we're going to dip down below $9,000, and we're going back to that DeGrom game against the Marlins because DeGrom is facing Eliezer Hernandez, who is $8,200. And he was a guy I used at times last year because he got strikeouts. Didn't always work. His ERA was not great, but it seems like Hernandez has taken all that stuff to a whole new level in 2020. And part of that is thanks to increased velocity. His four-seam fastball velocity is up to 91.5 miles per hour from 90.9. His slider velocity is up to 79.3, and both those are up 0.6 miles per hour from where they were last year. And he's throwing both of them more while lowering the usage on his changeup. So it's kind of like Dinelson Lamet, where it is risky because it makes Hernandez a two-pitch pitcher. He could run into issues when teams see him more often. But the Mets have not seen him yet, so I'm interested in what Hernandez could do tonight specifically, because he's looked great so far. In the 4 starts he has made, he has a 3.14 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate, 33%, with a 4% walk rate. And we saw Hernandez kind of have a leash on him initially because the pitch count was low, but it's been steadily on the rise. He threw 89 pitches his last time out, which was a new high for him. And his salary helps compensate for some of the issues in his profile. He's $8,200. You can accept some concerns at that mark. It also does help that his matchup is it makes the salary makes his matchup a bit less daunting. It's still not a team I like to target. We targeted the Mets a couple of times this year, and it hasn't always worked out. It's been fine, but they haven't let up big strikeout games. So I think that the big allure of tonight is the top end pitchers. All three of DeGrom, Gray, and Lamet are going to wind up higher on my list than Hernandez. But if you want to jump down a pitcher for tonight, I think Hernandez gives you a good route for doing so. So I think that all of these guys are very good options for tonight. Really good options in each salary tier. So once again, similar to yesterday, however you want to play things, you have a pitcher who can fit your process for Wednesday's slate. With that said, let's dive into the stacks. And we were talking to Lucas Giolito and how well he worked out. One thing that did not work out was stacking the Cubs. I've stacked them now 2 consecutive nights. It did work on Monday. It very much did not work last night. But I think we don't have much choice but to go here once again as they face Michael Fulmer. Fulmer has made 4 starts so far this year, and his most recent start was his best outing thus far. He had 4 strikeouts compared to just 1 walk, and that's good because it's progress from where he was. But Fulmer still allowed 5 earned runs across 3 innings. That was against a Cleveland offense that has really been struggling, and now he faces the Cubs. They still don't have Chris Bryant, but they're a tougher matchup right now, despite what happened last night, than the Cleveland offense. In those 4 starts for Fulmer, he has a 9.53 ERA. His skill interactive ERA is 5.10. He has allowed a 40% hard hit rate with a 43% ground ball rate. It's possible that Fulmer starts to show signs of life as he gets more built up. I have not seen the velocity go up yet. It's actually been going the opposite direction. So for now, the Cubs remain one of the top stacks yet again. Hopefully it works better than last night, but I feel a lot better about tonight than I did last night. That was more a speculative one, trying to bank in on Spencer Turnbull's recent struggles. Here, Fulmer's been struggling the entire year, so I think the Cubs a lot safer than they were last night. We talked about the Cubs a couple of times recently, as mentioned, but I don't think I've given Ian Happ enough credit for what he has done so far this year. His strikeout rate is down, his walk rate is way up, and he's done that, improving his plate discipline while adding tons of hard contact. You don't usually check all those boxes simultaneously, but Happ has done so this year. There have been a lot of extra base hits, and that has pushed him near the top of the order. Happ is $3,200, so it's not like he's some value play by any means, but he's very worth that salary. So when you're stacking the Cubs, I love Kyle Schwarber. I love Jason Hayward. Schwarber got a stolen base last night, which was sweet. But I think that it's important not to overlook Ian Happ. And I think with the salaries and the pitchers for tonight, you should be able to get to Happ pretty easily. So I definitely want to make sure I don't overlook him, given Rizzo, Baez, Schwarber, Hayward, Contreras, all the good guys I have on this team. I want to make sure Ian Happ does not get lost in the shuffle in my lineups. For our second stack, we've talked a lot about Jon Gray this year. We spotted his velocity being down right away, and initially, stacking against Jon Gray did not work. His results were really good. But the past few outings, the results have swung heavily in our favor, so I'm going to keep it up here by stacking the Diamondbacks against Gray tonight. We're up to a 6-start sample on Jon Gray, and his velocity did go up in his most recent start, but it was still just on par with his first start this year, which is way down from where it was last year. That makes me feel pretty secure about looking at the full season sample for Gray, and that full season sample is a 5.55 skill interactive ERA with a 12% strikeout rate. The ground ball rate for Gray used to be a plus. It's now down to 38%. His hard hit rate is 46%. So when you look at Gray's profile overall, there's kind of little fires burning everywhere, and that's concerning. Arizona, the team he's facing tonight, actually dealt him the biggest blowback on August 8th, so they can knock him around. He is not in Coors Field. That definitely does help, but he was not in Coors Field last week either. Got bounced around there. They've been keeping the roof open at Chase Field more often, and that's a good thing for offense with those hot temperatures. So the Diamondbacks are a priority stack for me once again tonight, even with this one not at Coors Field, continuing to stack once again against John Gray. The batter in Arizona, who is similar to me to Ian Happ, is a guy who can occasionally get lost in the shuffle because of other shiny objects on the team. That's Cole Calhoun, and I think that he's a crucial part of the stack. Calhoun has a 52% hard hit rate and a 40% fly ball rate against righties so far this year. And it's not like this came out of nowhere. We were talking about Calhoun at the beginning of the year as someone who had a better year than perception last year as well. He's had great results. He, I think, is one of the first guys I would lock into a Diamondback stack. He's $3,100, so it's not like, again, he's not a huge salary saver, but I think that he's either at the top of my list or very close to it. I know that, they've got awesome hitters on this team, but I think that Calhoun, a bit underrated and someone I want to make sure I prioritize for tonight. For the third stack, we're going to go to a not-so-hot park. That's the Oakland Athletics. They're in Texas, and I'm guessing the roof will probably be shut there for tonight, but even that is an upgrade. Assuming the roof is shut, that is an upgrade from where the A's play their home games. So I am good stacking them here against Colby Allard. Allard has been changing things around this year with his pitch mix. He's been throwing more cutters, throwing more curveballs while lowering the usage on his changeup. The changeup wasn't a bad pitch for him last year, so it's a bit confusing to see Allard lowering the usage on that, but it has helped him increase his strikeout rate. It's 22.9%, which is up from 15.9% last year. That's good. You want more strikeouts. The bad is that his ground ball rate has totally disappeared, and he's letting up lots of hard contact. So the gains he has gotten via increasing his strikeout rate have largely been mitigated by regression in his batted ball numbers. And we can see that when we look at the results for Allard so far. A 7.82 ERA. He has allowed 10 earned runs in his past two outings alone. One of those was a Coors, so we could probably toss that one out, but the second one was not, and that's pretty concerning in such a small sample to allow 10 earned runs. The A's, a dangerous team for a struggling pitcher, dangerous team for good pitchers too, because they have a 46% hard hit rate and a 40% fly ball rate in a small sample against lefties this year. So the A's, despite not being in a great park, deserve to be pretty high on our stacking list for tonight. And it does help that they have some value plays hitting at the top of their lineup. Marcus Semien and Ramon Laureano are both $2,800. They've actually had fine results this year. Usually when you see guys batting near the top of the order with low salaries, it means their results haven't been good. But Semien and Laureano aren't tearing the cover off the ball, or they haven't had great results. But they haven't been bad, especially once you adjust to their park. And their peripherals are good too. They're making hard contact. They're striking out a bit too much, but they're making good contact, and that's what I care more about here. So I'm going to start my Oakland stacks at the top with Semien and Laureano, go from there. Mark Canha, not a value anymore at $3,200, but he's very much worth that, and that's affordable when we have DeGrom at 10.7 as our highest salary pitcher of the night. We can make that happen for sure. So Canha, Chapman, Semien, Laureano, all awesome plays for tonight. And of course, Matt Olson too, despite it being a lefty, for tonight with the Oakland A's. We're going to start things to watch by staying in that exact same game, because the other side of that one is interesting, at least for one-offs, because the Rangers are facing Mike Fiers. Fiers has a 5.92 skill interactive ERA with a 12% strikeout rate this year, and we could stack against that. There just aren't a ton of quality hitters on the Rangers to use within those stacks, because Joey Gallo works for sure. His salaries come down, so I think you can buy him for sure. Nick Solak has been improving. You could take a swipe at Derek Dietrich if you wanted, and Shin-Soo Choo works if he can start, but he's been out for almost a week now. And so there are individual guys I am okay with using on this Rangers team. It's just hard to find four hitters at once that I want to use. So okay with using one-offs in the Rangers. I might not get there for stacking just because there aren't a ton of great options. It's a very similar thread with the Rockies. There are very few things that I'd want to do less than stacking the Rockies outside of Coors Field, but I do think that they are an option here. They're facing Robbie Ray. He has been a train wreck all season long, and people just aren't chasing his pitches outside the zone anymore. So the strikeout rate has plummeted for Ray, and that was basically all he had in his favor before this time. So the Rockies, definitely an option, but they're kind of similar to the Rangers, where it's just there aren't that many players who I actually want to use within that stack. So sure, they're fine, but realistically, I'm probably not going to get a full stack there because it's hard to find four batters who I want to use. So the Rangers and Rockies, mostly good for one-offs for tonight. If the game in Buffalo actually does play between the Blue Jays and the Red Sox, I think we could consider some hitters there. The Blue Jays haven't said who they're starting yet. It could be Anthony Kay, who is a reliever. If it is him, he's a lefty. I'd be into Kevin Pillar and Christian Vasquez as value plays there. The Red Sox are throwing Colton Brewer. I would guess that Darwinzon Hernandez would be in a piggyback situation with Brewer like they did last week, and that'd work for the Jays. So it's a relevant game. I would check out that one if the rain does clear, but maybe that's the reason the Rockies haven't announced their starters. They saw the forecast and realized that game might not play. So if it plays, I would check it out for sure, but I would not bank on it just because the forecast doesn't look too pretty for tonight. That is all the time that we have for today here on the Solo Shot. But remember, we are back here at 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook pages to answer your questions. Get you set for tonight. We can talk process, pitchers, stacks, one-offs, lineups as they come out, whatever it may be. You can get those questions in at 4 p.m. Eastern until 4:25 on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. If you're watching the Solo Shot on YouTube right now, save yourself the trouble and just subscribe while you are there. Also, check out the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed for PGA, NBA, NHL, and soon NASCAR podcast and NFL just around the corner. We have 2 per week there as well, so should be a whole lot of fun. Make sure you check us out there by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck with your DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.